name is Rob Pirazzini or Roberto Pirazzini. I teach 4 levels of Italian, including AP and IB Italian, at a high school in San Diego. It's in Chula Vista, which is not in the city of San Diego, but a little south of there. We are really close to the border with Mexico, and I would say 80% of my students speak Spanish, or maybe a little bit more. Enrollment in Italian, I think it helps. It's always a battle between myself and the other teachers that don't teach Spanish. We fight for students, and we do what we can to try and increase enrollment. I'm Italian. My ethnicity is Italian and Mexican. And even though my dad was Italian, he was a Spanish teacher at a high school, and my mom is Mexican, and she was a Spanish teacher. So I grew up with Spanish in the household. My grandfather, who was Italian, taught at Mesa College. It's a 2-year college here in San Diego, and he taught for almost 40 years, teaching Italian and occasionally Spanish. I never wanted to be a teacher because my parents were teachers, and I tried to go a totally different route, but my mom always knew best. I went back to school and got a teaching credential. And so I was teaching history at this school. And then my wife and I decided to go teach abroad, and we really wanted to go teach in Italy. So we got a job in Genoa. So we taught at an IB international school in Genoa for a couple of years, where my Italian continued to improve. And then I came back to the school, and at night I was going to classes at night to get like the equivalency of a credential in Italian. I was able to get 30 units in upper division Italian, which got me a credential in Italian. And the principal said, hey, if you can get students to sign up for Italian, go for it. And because, as I mentioned, so many do speak Spanish, they want to learn a third language. And so I've been quite successful. This is my 15th year teaching Italian full time. So pretty happy about that. Yeah, I built it from nothing. And she was like, hey, if you can find students, do it. And the first year I had 4 sections of Italian 1-2, which is for us is first year. And I still had to teach history as well. But now I just teach full-time Italian. Pre-COVID, we've had a cultural exchange with a high school in the Veneto area. And I've been doing that for the past, I would say 15 years, but the 14 years. And it is a life-changing program for my students. I'm taking kids, some have never been on a plane or outside of San Diego or Tijuana, and I'm taking them all the way to Italy. We first host students here in the fall for 2 weeks, and it's typically my AP and IB students that will host students for 2 weeks. We take them around San Diego. They always want to go to LA, go to Hollywood, and then they see Hollywood and they're like, this is Hollywood? I'm like, yeah, I don't know why you want to go see Hollywood, but Italians always want to go see Hollywood. And we take them to the desert. And then in the spring, we go there and they host us. It used to be a program where I'd also take them for a couple of nights to Florence and to Rome. But, it kind of took away from the program of it just being a cultural exchange. So now we just stay with families. So that's really motivated me, that these students become so passionate about learning Italian. Before COVID hit, I had 9 former students that were living and thriving in Italy. And it's just so cool to see that, and I still have a couple, they were forced to come back. But I still have 2. One student has been living there for 8 years now, and he has no intention of ever moving back to the United States. And another girl's been living there for 4 years, and she has no intention of moving back to here. She comes back to visit. Her dad's one of my colleagues, so he's always giving me a hard time, like, hey, my daughter moved to Italy because of you. I'm like, I just opened the door. It was Italy that, she fell in love with. And my students love learning Italian, and they love learning about the culture. And whenever we have cultural events here, we go to the opera pre-COVID. We go to opera, we go to Little Italy for dinner beforehand, and then we walk over to the theater and watch an Italian opera. Or Little Italy used to have festivals. They stopped doing that. So maybe it's been a little harder to be motivated during COVID because there aren't those extra things to do. Or October is a film festival. But it's mainly the students that keep me motivated because they become so passionate about it. And they're the ones teaching me new songs. Because I'm still stuck in my old music, and they're like, no, but this new rap song, and so I try to play that for my students, and it's a lot of fun. I try to make it fun for them, because who wants to be sitting here bored all day? So, COVID was a big change that, okay, now I'm going to be at home, in my kitchen and teaching these students. And I was fortunate enough that our district gave us 2 weeks training. And we had a lot of meetings that we went to, and some things that I found that I used during COVID and I still use now because
Mhm.
I fell in love with them. One was Google Classroom. I'm old school. I wasn't using Google Classroom before. So I use Google Classroom, which I love now. But some of the other things are like Edpuzzle. There are
Mhm.
so many great videos on Edpuzzle that I had no idea what Edpuzzle was before, and so I'm finding some on there so I don't have to reinvent the wheel, but I'm also making and creating some myself, which are just great ways for the students. Some it depends on the level. I try to do everything in the target language because I feel if the teacher is speaking in English, how are they learning Italian? But if it's culture, then if we're learning about a region, then sometimes it'll be, especially if it's the beginning levels, we'll do things in English. Maybe I'll find a Rick Steves video on Edpuzzle about Rome or something with questions. But otherwise, once they get to second year, third year, and fourth year, we only speak Italian. Of course, they can make mistakes, but they have to speak Italian, and I need to speak Italian to them. So definitely, Edpuzzle is one of the biggest things. And then I like to use, if on a Friday, if we're reviewing something, quizzes, which is similar to Kahoot, but a quizzes, students can go at their own pace. So it's not always the fastest, but it's who is the most accurate. Kahoot as well. Quizlet, we'll play Quizlet to review some verbs and things like that. But now that we're back, well, I have a large screen. Let me show you over here. I don't know if can you see that? It was something that the school got us during COVID. If students, teachers came to the school to teach from here, and I use that all the time now because you
Mhm.
can touch it and do everything on there and show the videos and so forth, and that's really cool. So I'm still a bit old school, but I've got some new tricks up my sleeve. But probably not as some of the younger teachers, but I think there's something to be said for old school. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's for me, just like for students actually handwriting things out. I think you remember more than always typing things out. I'll tell them. So one of the best ways to learn this stuff is a really fun way of writing it over and over and over and over and over and like, prof, come on, prof, ma non è divertente. Oh yeah, è molto divertente. There's like, I'm like, okay, I'm just kidding, but that's just a good way for you to remember things, for
Yeah.
me. I think something like that. So yeah, it's fun and I enjoy it very much. And like I said, it's been life changing for myself, but also for many of my students, which is, why I'm here.